As inflation stays elevated globally, about 14.4 trillion naira contributed by retirement savings account holders, or RSAs, face the risk of losing value to currency depreciation and inflation. Let's talk now to Wise Chigudu, partner in insurance leader EY West Africa. Join us right here in the studio. Great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, so these investments, looks like they stand a massive risk, right now, from currency devaluation to inflation. It's like a double, whammy at this time. What do you think PFAs, that's a pension fund administrator, what do you think they can do, at this time to kind of hedge these investments?
So it is important. Thank you very much for bringing this up. It is important during a time like this to actually look at the impact of this inflation. First of all, on those that are still contributing. I'm talking to the younger members of the pension schemes that are making contributions towards their pension funds, and those that are near retirement and the retirees. So let's start off with the first category, which are the younger people. Inflation, what normally happens is that as you have this high inflation, wages begin to catch up over time. So there shouldn't be much of a worry for them, because they continue to contribute 10% by the company, 8% by themselves to the pension schemes. And as their wages go up, then it provides that hedge.
And we did get that report that wages are not growing as fast in Nigeria. So that's another problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, but there's always a lag. So eventually, it's very much an economic principle. If people are not getting enough, then they start looking for jobs elsewhere, or they begin to japwa, which is a big Nigerian phenomenon at the moment. So as wages catch up, then over time you would expect those effects to counteract. It's the retirees that are the problem. The major role of the PFA is to provide security and moderate and appropriate returns on the investments that the pensioners are making. And that's what they do when they buy the bonds. The bonds give certainty of income, and they also give security, since most of them are FGN bonds. I think about 73% of the investments, according to the latest reports, are going to FGN bonds, which provide that security of income. But inflation, of course, is ravaging the value of those investments, which is the unfortunate outcome of the war in Ukraine and the inflation that it has imported into Nigeria.
Right, and obviously, currency devaluation, that's another, big problem. And most of these investments are denominated, in the Naira. What are the other options, really?
Well, it's interesting. The whole idea of how you make investments for pensions is to match the outgoes from the investment, the inflows from the investments to match the outgoes for the pensioners. So pensioners' income is denominated in Naira. So what you don't want to do as well is to create a currency risk when the inflows that are coming in are no longer matching the outflows that are going out. So as long as the Naira is stabilized, and we can see the CBN taking measures to try to arrest the depreciation in the Naira, then that would become less of an issue.
And there's no point introducing some kind of foreign currency that's more stable, maybe the greenback?
Well, we're introducing a currency now. That's
maybe they can invest in more dollar-denominated, assets.
Well, the current global investment climate, unfortunately, driven by the war in Ukraine, the effects that we're seeing in Nigeria now are being experienced globally. It's not just a Nigerian phenomenon. In fact, there are economic forecasts that seem to suggest that the West is going to go into a period of stagflation as well. So it's not a panacea to the problems we are facing.
Right, and I saw a recent report, and it indicates that the PFAs, underperformed inflation and MPR in the first 9 months of this year.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's your reaction to that?
So
it's quite scary.
It's really scary, but it's really important for us to understand once again that the drivers of what we are seeing now are exogenous. The inflation is imported from global events. And we are going to inevitably go through a period of stagflation, which is a period where you have high inflation and you also have high interest rates and you have slowing economic growth globally. So this is something that we're going to have to ride through.
Right through. And
yeah.
Obviously, you know, when you come to your retirement, and I remember a story, you know, about what happened in Europe at some point when the retirees got to the end and they found out that all they contributed for all their life could only get a cup of coffee. You know, that happened.
Yeah. yeah. It can happen. It can happen. What we can look at is expanding the universe of assets that PFAs can invest in, and start including more assets that provide that inflation hedge, which is one of the issues we currently have in the market, that we have got that restriction. Number one, inflation-linked bonds. You know, in more developed markets, they have these inflation-linked bonds which provide a certain hedge. Whenever inflation goes up, the income or the coupons on the inflation-linked bonds also go up as well, which provides some level of protection to retirees. Number two, more investment into real assets. So just having, including some, so real assets are basically commodities. And allowing pension funds to have some direct exposure to real assets, because real assets tend to also track inflation. So for instance, right now globally, as you know, crude oil is going up, and as a result, it provides any direct exposure to that, provides that inflation protection that you need. But I think we just need to start having a lot more access to assets that are either linked to real assets or are actually inflation-linked bonds issued by the FGM.
And it looks like the PFAs are limited with, you know, the kind of investments, you know, they can make at this time, because according to the law, they can only, you know, invest in specific, you know, investments. What do you think? Should there be some kind of amendment to allow them, you know, diversify, you know, as far as they can?
Yes. So the whole point behind putting those limits, of course, is to ensure the security of pensioners' assets and to ensure that PFAs don't take undue risk in investment portfolios. But increasing the universe obviously improves the level of diversification. At the moment, what the PENCOM has done is issue regulations that say how much of a particular security can invest in, and there are only maximum limits. So those maximum limits are meant to protect pensioners' assets. So the availability of more of those assets that PFAs can invest in can actually also help in allowing for diversity and also diversification, and also to allow for inflation proofing.
And we did get that a new law to allow, you know, contributors, you know, take some of that pension and use for a mortgage. How does inflation and, you know, rate hikes, how does it impact, you know, what you can actually use to maybe start some kind of mortgage, you know, out of your pension contribution?
There have already been some adjustments to regulation to take account of that. I think you are allowed up to 25% of your RSA to contribute towards a mortgage. So yes, there is that provision already. But more importantly, it's in an environment like this, there's always panic, and also there's always news about, well, what is going to happen to my pension? Is it necessary for me to? I always say it's important for people to continue to contribute towards their pension schemes. Contribute more if you can, because over time, the inflation of your wages are going to go up, and all this is going to balance out. It's more the near retirees and the retirees that we should be concerned about, and try to find a safety net for them. One alternative would be that the investment income, for instance, the allocation of the returns more towards the retirees the near retirees to ensure that we protect their contributions, and also we protect the pension that they get so that they can have a good standard of living in retirement.
And these are quite, interesting times, in the world with sky-high inflation, globally. And I'm sure this might not have been experienced, by, pension fund administrators and, players in that industry. What do you see, going forward?
Okay, so the major driver of this, let's just break this down, is because of the war in Ukraine and the imported inflation that has come in. Now, in Nigeria, we've got a second scenario, which is the inflation, the elections that are coming, and you normally get a slowdown in the economy around that time, the time of the elections. So what I would say is this is a temporary phenomenon. Over the next year, maybe we are going to continue to experience the impact of high inflation, global slowdown, but I believe that it's part of the economic cycle. I'm very optimistic that we are going to get back to normal times soon.
Right, and obviously we've seen, pension contributors, they've been able to move from one, PFA to another. They've been given that leeway. How's that going?
I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It allows pension contributors to be able to choose the PFAs that manage their funds. It puts pressure on PFAs to improve on their investment returns and their custodianship of assets. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I mean, I think the level of corporate governance of PFAs over time has really improved. Information is available, so you can actually see which ones are performing better than others, and there's benchmarking. The only risk you have with that, of course, is that pensions are supposed to be a longer-term investment. So having that kind of benchmarking encourages short-termism. And as a result, because of that as well, you then find that it becomes very difficult for a PFA to stand out. So if everyone begins to invest in FG bonds and treasury bills, which are the most secure investments, and you decide to invest in equities, and the equity portfolio and the equity market goes against you,
right? Because we've seen a lot of downturn in those markets.
Then you stick out like a sore thumb. So as a result of that, you then get this head mentality where over time, almost everyone is moving more and more into FG bonds and treasury bills, and that level of diversification that you want to see in the portfolio is getting washed away. So we would like to see a few more of them, taking an alternative way of investing, putting in a little bit more of those alternative assets. After all, you're allowed from 5 to 10% in alternative investments, such as private equities, such as you are also allowed to invest in property, which in normal circumstances will also provide you with a good inflation hedge.
Well, not an easy time for investors globally, definitely. But I guess the younger ones might as well continue contributing. That's your message.
Yes, that's my message.
Thank you so much, Wise Chigudu, Partner and Insurance Leader, EY West Africa. It was great having your perspective.
Thank you very much for having me.